Hey guys, welcome to Indie Game Hustle. My name is Charles. In this video, we're going to take a look at how we can target our enemies. Now, if you've noticed when you're trying to attack your enemies, your character is typically just kind of swinging and then you're just kind of hitting the button until you can kind of face the enemy to attack. And it makes it a bit difficult. So as you can see here, I'm just going to go and try to attack this enemy here. Now, let's see there. And if I do that, as you notice, I have to turn the character around just to get to face the enemy. And while you can probably get away with doing this, and that's fine, you can probably do this, it would be much easier if you can actually target your enemy very similar to something like in a Zelda or something where you're kind of like pivoting around the enemy and you're facing them at all times until you want to disengage from that enemy. And so there's a really great tool for this, and it's part of Game Creator, and it's not actually built into Game Creator, but it's a community built Game Creator module, very similar to something like the Melee module. There is a module called the Combat Module created by Fire ChickenGames. Now, in order to utilize this module, you will need to also have the shooter module. And let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So this here will be the Fire ChickenGames Combat Module. And in terms of the shooter module, you're going to need the Catsoft Studios here shooter module. Okay, and so once you have both of those installed, you would be able to utilize the combat module. It's really nice. It has a lot of features here, and you can kind of read through those features. And we won't be using every single one, but one of the ones we're going to touch on first is definitely be targeting the enemy. Okay, so I'm going to go head over back to my project here. And I actually already installed those. So basically what you will want to do is purchase those from the Unity Asset Store and then head over to Window Package Manager, right? And then inside your Package Manager, you want to go My Assets. And then once you're here, you can either type in the word combat and it should show up, or you can just search for it alphabetically, right? And then you would hit download or install and then import. And it should import the latest version. Okay, and also you would want to look for the shooter module, and so you would go ahead and type in shooter as I did here, and then eventually that's going to show up, and then you'll also have the shooter module. So what you want to do is install it and then you would import it. Okay, all right, great. So once you've installed both of those with the package manager, the next step would be to go over to this menu here, Game Creator, and you want to head over to where it says Module Manager. Okay. All right. So the next step, you're going to see Shooter here. You're going to see Shooter Examples, and then below that, you may see Combat Examples, Examples Melee, Combat, Melee, all of these. What I would recommend is you install every single one, not just one or the other, okay? I found that everything works out the box once you have everything installed, and it makes it really easy for you to be able to utilize the combat module in its full, okay? Because it has a really great list of things it can do, all right? So once you've installed that, you would just hit install. And if you've already gotten it, you just make sure it's always already updated and you should be good to go. So once those installed, if you want to check out the examples, what you want to do is head over to the assets folder, and then you will go down where it says plugins. And here is where Fire ChickenGames will have its own particular plugin for this. You just double click. And then once you're in there, you're going to have combat examples, melee examples, and the combat examples for shooter as well. So for example, if I were to click on scenes, double click, you're going to see these different topics here. All right, and we're going to touch on a few of these. All right, but for this video, we're going to talk about targeting. So what I'm going to do very quickly is just show you very quickly what that looks like, and then we're going to create a scene from scratch so we can set it up ourselves. All right, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and save my scene here, and then I'm going to go ahead and double click on targeting. All right, so this is going to be the scene here that we have. It's going to have your basic game creator character here. And if you have pink material like this, but your whole scene is pink, don't worry about it. All you would need to do is head over to game object. Actually, I'm sorry, not game object. You would want to go over to edit, render pipeline, universal render pipeline. And what you want to do is do project materials to universal RP. Okay, and so that should get rid of all of your materials here. This particular one, I'm not exactly sure. It's some type of default material, but it does not hamper what we have going on. All right, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and hit the play button for this scene, and let's see how it actually works. It's a wonderful asset to be able to make it super easy to target an object in your scene. All right, so we have a player here, and in this case, the example says press Q to start targeting and press Z or C to change the target, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and hit the Q button on my keyboard, and as you can see, it has this target here. All right, great, and then we can change that target again by hitting the Z key, and as you can see there, we're targeting that as well. So that works really great. And so that's a really nice, nifty feature. And now you have, as you can see here, you have different things here. So if we want to target over here, as you can see, we can target that object as well. All right, so really quick, let's go ahead and create a scene. So what I'm going to do is go into my project, and I'm going to, where is my project there? And I'm going to go into world. I'm going to go to test only, and I'm just going to go new scene. All right. And actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to test. All right. So this is a blank scene. In this particular scene, the reason I'm going to set us up in a blank scene is because I want us to use the prefabs that we created in a previous video, because I wanted to kind of show how all of that would work together and how easy it would be to get your scene up and running once everything is good. So the first thing you see here is nothing. There's nothing in this scene. All we have is a main camera and a directional light. All right. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create something for our player to walk on. So I'm going to do a Control D, Control S, so I can use my UModeler tool here. And of course, you can use whatever you would like for that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click and drag out a space and go up some. There we go. So I have something to put our player on here. All right, great. All right, so the next thing I want to do is go to my prefabs. So I'm going to go over to my file here. I'm going to go into prefabs, and then I'm going to go into objects. And what I'm going to do is grab the player spawn here. And this is the one that we created. So I'm going to click and drag this into our scene as so. Great. So now we have that in our scene. All right. And so another thing that we're going to need in this scene is our game manager. So I'm going to double click that, and I'm going to click that and bring that into our scene as well. And then what I'm going to do here in the hierarchy is I'm going to make it to where we don't see it or select it, but it's there. All right, great. All right, so the next thing we might want to do is take a look at our objects and see what we have here. We have a main camera, and we have a camera motor. Now, we could bring this camera motor and this main camera into this scene if we want to do that. I may not. Let's just see if it works, though. So I'm going to delete this main camera, and I'm going to delete that camera. And so I'm going to click and drag this camera into the scene like so. And then I'm going to click and drag the camera motor into the scene as well. All right. So next I'm going to do is select this main camera, and I'm going to go down. And at the very end here, you see camera controller. We're going to click and drag this main camera motor in here. Okay, so that should work out pretty good. And what I'll do is go ahead and select this camera and just kind of position it like so. It doesn't really necessarily matter where we position it, but I just want to get it there. All right, great. So far we have our game manager, we have our motor, camera, and our player spawn. So let's take a look and see if this is working. I'm gonna hit play. All right, so as you can see in the scene, it looks like our camera or our player or our something is not working, and I can actually fix that very quickly. What you want to do is take a look at your spawn point, because it's the cameras, everything is working. However, it doesn't know what it's supposed to focus on and whatnot. So what we want to do is take a look at our player spawn. I'm going to go into my conditions, and what I want to do is set this value here to 0, because that's where our player is spawning, at the 0 range right now. Because if you were to remember, if you take a look at our preferences, we have our player spawn point. It's going to be based on 0 always initially. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move that. So let's see if that helps us. All right. So great. So now we have our player in the scene, and we have something to walk on. We have the camera and everything as we originally set it up. And as you can see, it is working properly. So that's great. So that's how quickly you can actually get your scene set up. But now we want to focus on some enemies or some objects in our scene so our player can target them really easy. So let's do that really quick. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And the next thing I'm going to do is go into my folder here, my project folder, and I'm going to go into my prefabs. And first thing I want to do is take a look at my player. And here, what I'll do is double click into my player because it's a prefab, and we're going to add a few things to this player. So one of the first components that we want to add to this player is going to be a component called the shooter, player shooter. Okay. And this is part of the, I believe, part of the shooter module. We're going to need that. Combat is going to require this particular component to be added in order for it all to work together. Okay, so just make sure that you have that added. All right, so the next thing we want to add to our player is a new mechanic. Now, this new mechanic is going to be something called targeting or targetable or something like that. So what I'm going to do is right click here, and I'm going to go to create empty, and then what I'm going to do is just call this mechanic target, and you can name it whatever you want, but mech target, something like that. And so now what we want to do is add some components to this. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, and there's our player here, I'm going to go add component, and what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to add is a sphere collider. And what the sphere collider is for is this is going to dictate what objects are within range that we can actually target, right, on our enemy. So what I'm going to do is change this to something like 20, like something huge. So that's going to be our range for that. All right. So the next component that we want to add is going to be called targetable, I believe. So I'm going to go ahead and type in TAR, and you're going to see one called targetable and targeter. So what we want to do is be the targeter. So we're going to be targeting, and then we're going to place the targetable on the enemy. All right, great. So as you can see here, the targeter is the player, and everything else we're just going to leave basic here. And as you can see here, for the user input, it's pretty nice. We have the targeting on and off, so that's what's going to initiate that. And then you have the next target or the previous target buttons for the keyboard. All right, great. So we have that set up, so that should work out perfectly. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get out of our prefab. And so the next thing I want to do is grab another prefab here. And so I'm going to go in here, enemies. I'm going to go into minions, and I'm going to go to dim, and I'm going to grab this character here. And this is our other prefab. All right. And so what I'm going to do is first make this space a little larger. So I'm going to bring this out some. All right, great. And let's see here. So that should work out pretty good. And what I'm going to do is move our enemy player here over here. Okay. And what I'll do is turn them around as well. All right, great. So that should work out pretty good. Now, another thing I want to do is I'm going to go into this particular prefab and I'm going to go to mechanics. And I think, let's see here. We have attack. So what I think I'm going to do is turn off the attack just for now. And I just want to see if they're going to be moving or not. All right. And another thing I want to do is change what the camera motor is looking at. All right. So I'm going to go to my camera motor. And currently the camera motor is set to follow, and that's fine. So what I want to do now is change it to something else, maybe fixed. Or actually, let's change it back. Let's change it back to follow. And what I'll do is go ahead and hit play, and let's see what our camera is looking at. We want to get a good view of what's going on in our scene. All right. All right, so it looks like our player fell off of something, so I'm going to go ahead and check that really quick. But this is what our character is looking at. So let's go ahead and see what's going on with our player here. And not sure why he fell, but we're going to take a look at that here again. Just a second. I'm going to hit play, hit pause, and then I'll hit play. All right. Okay. All right. So it looks like our enemy is falling through. So let's take a look at why that is the case. And let's see here. Let me take a look at our player really quick. I'm going to double click into our player, and then I'm going to take a look at the mech target. And the issue is because look how big this is, that sphere, it's not a trigger. So make sure that that is set to is trigger. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so let's go back and see if our enemy is doing better here. Let's see if that helps. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit play. All right, so now we have our enemy. So yes, that trigger was a collider. So it was basically making our enemy basically sit on top of it. Okay, great. All right, so that's great. So now we have that enemy there, and as you can see, our screen here is a little close, and we don't want that. That's a little too close. So what I'm gonna do is take a look at my camera motor, and I want to bring it up some, like so, and I'm gonna bring it back to maybe something like this. Yeah, something like this. So 5.5 and a negative 4. Negative 4. So let's just remember 5.5, negative 4. All right. So go to my camera motor, 5.5, negative 4. So now when we start the scene, we should be good to go. All right, great. So we have the camera following the player, and there is the enemy there. All right, so the next thing we want to do is take a look at our enemy here. So I'm going ahead and hit play. All right, so I'm going to click on the enemy here, and what we want to do is add a component here, and it's going to be targetable. All right, and so now we have this component added to this particular enemy. All right, and so within here, all we need to do is do a couple things here. So they have can be targeted, okay? And then we have the active target indicator. So what this is going to do is give you the ability when a player is targeted, you'll be able to add like an icon or something over their head. So for instance, if I hit this prefab and I type in active, I think it's an indicator. I think there's an indicator prefab in here, if I'm not mistaken. If not, we can create one later. Yeah, we can probably create one later. But we can do that there as well. So we would be able to put like an active indicator there. And then below here, we have some other options. I won't be using these particular ones, but those are something that we can do. All right, great. So let's see what we get by just kind of just adding this here. And let's see what we actually are going to get from this. All right, so I'm going to hit play. All right, so we have our player, and we know that the Q is the button to target. So as you can see, I was able to target this enemy by just simply hitting the Q, and now I can actually attack this enemy very quickly and very easily. Great. And it looks like we got some type of input thing there, but we'll deal with those types of things later. Not sure what that was. But as you can see how quickly we're able to set up that. Now what I want to do now is turn off his attack. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the attack so he's not moving. And let's see here. So I'm going to have him there. If he's not moving, we should be able to just have him just stand in one place. And so we can take a look. All right, great. So as you can see, he's good to go. Now that trigger with the health bar popping over, remember that was a sphere collider that we created just to display his health. And of course that health is facing us, the player. All right, and if I hit the Q, we're good to go. And that works out really good. And that bar above, we can mess with that. We can put names in there. We can do other things. Like I said, we'll play with that here in a second. But as you can see, it's really great. And so now if I hit Q, I can break off of this guy. Great. All right, so what I'm going to do now is add some additional information to the enemy. All right. So I'm going to head down to this area here, targetable. All right, so the first thing I'm going to probably do is try to change out that target indicator. So you want to, of course, make this indicator enabled. If you turned it off, then you would still be able to target. It just wouldn't have any type of indicator there. So you want to leave that on. And instead of searching here, I'm going to actually go into here and just type in the word active and see if it shows up here. Looks like it's there. So what I'll do is click and drag this into this area here. So it's called active target indicator, and I believe that is going to come part with the module itself. I'm going to lock this panel and I'm going to select this. Yeah, and it definitely is coming part of this module, so that's great. All right, so we have this target indicator there. All right, that's great. And so if I were to hit play, let's take a look and see what that gives us. All right, so I'm going to hit play. All right, great. So now we have our scene and there's our enemy, right? So he's ready to get all beat up. So as you can see, I can still swing and do things without targeting. And when I get close, I can still see their health. But if I hit Q, as you can see, now we have a nice little arrow there hovering over the head, facing us, and we can get that switched out when we're ready to actually focus on graphics and things like that. But for now, this is perfect. All right, great. So what's great is I can indicate from wherever I need to. So from here, I can still indicate. I don't need to see their health. But as I get closer to initiate an attack, I get to see the health that way. All right, great. So now if I want to disengage, I disengage. Great, perfect. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit play. All right, so another thing that we can do is go ahead and add multiple enemies here. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy and paste him. And let's see how this performs with multiple enemies in the scene. All right, so I'm going to create that one. Oh, not that way. That way. And I'll bring him out a little bit like that. Take this guy, bring him out, push him out a little bit. And just for fun, I'll create another one and put him here and have him facing this way. All right, great. And then what we can do is go ahead and change our spawn point. And I'll just move the spawn point in the center. All right, great. All right, so let's go ahead and hit play and see what we get here. All right, great. All right, so we got 4 enemies here, and as you can see, all the health is activating based on how close we are, based on that. All right, so if I was to hit the Q button now, it's going to activate the one that I'm closest to. So that was the one I was closest to when I hit the Q button. All right, so if I want to disengage from him, I can. I'm going to go over here, Q, and now we can go ahead and target this one as well. Now, if I were to go over here and hit Q, it disengages. And so now we're good to go. We hit Q again. Now we engage, which is awesome. But another thing that we can do, I'm going to hit Q and now I'm not connected. What I'm going to do is hit Q. It looks like I'm closer to that one. Now I'm going to hit the Z key. And then it looks like I'm closer. That's the next one in the list. Then that one, then that one, then that one. Great. And we can actually go back and forth. Now we're going to have to set up our buttons later because right now C is previous and C is also crawl. So we're going to have to change that later. But for now, as you can see, I can switch between all these different guys as needed, which is really nice. All right, so even if I'm over here, I can hit the Z key and I can switch there. And if I'm over here, I can still hit the Z key and go to the next guy on the list. Great, perfect. All right, and so I want to disengage. All right, so what would happen if one of these guys died? So let's see if I can kill these guys. I'm not sure if that was going to work. Let's see here. So I'm going to target, and I'm going to attack. If you noticed, I was targeting this enemy, that enemy, and then this one was then targeted. So while you're targeting, just keep in mind, I'm currently targeting this enemy, and I'm going to attack this enemy, right? And as you can see how easy it is to stay focused and attack because of this. All right, so as soon as I attack the last point, it readjusts to the next closest enemy. All right, and then I can do that. Really nice how fluid that is. I can just disengage, and if I want to get this one, boom, change it, or I can just hit a button and change it to the next one, and it works really good. So I'll go ahead and destroy this one. Great, and then I automatically can switch my attention to this particular enemy. Great, and so now all the enemies are gone, and as you can see, I'm not focused on any enemy because they're not in the scene anymore. It works really, really well. All right. So another thing that we can take a look at is actually putting some text above the enemy's name. So for instance, I'm going to select, let's select this guy here, and let's focus on him. So what I want to do is go into the targetable actions here, and let's take a look at how we may be able to do that. So as you can see, we have the active target indicator. Currently, we're using an active target indicator prefab. Okay, now of course the offset is going to dictate how high that is away from the player. So of course 0 would probably be somewhere in the center of the actual enemy. And then if you bring it up some on the Y, as you can see, it would go up on the Y. And so you would put it somewhere up there. All right, so in terms of the text content, what we can do is set it to be a local variable. Now, of course, you can use a global variable, but we don't want to do that. What we might want to do is do a local variable. And then what we might want to do is do invoker. And what I'll do is name this guy John. And what I can do is add a component to this. And what I'll do is call in a component called local variables. And what I'll do is take this, instead of calling it John, of course, what I'll say is name. And I'll just say my name. So my name. Okay, so we're going to call this variable my name. And what we're going to do is take this, copy it, and we're going to go ahead and paste it here, hit the plus key. And what I'll do is go ahead and give it a type string, and then we're going to call this particular enemy John. Johnny, why not? All right, so that should work. Let's take a look and see if that works. All right, so I'm going to target. And as you can see now, Johnny's name is above the icon as well, which is great. Now, I don't personally use local variables a whole lot, but this is a great use for it, especially if you want to give names to these particular enemies or something like that. This is a very quick way to be able to do that. All right, great. And as I can just go ahead and destroy Johnny. Boom. And now we're going to focus on this guy. And he doesn't have a name. All right, great. Perfect. And so that's a really nice way to go about it. Now, something else to talk about. Now, you notice we were talking about how our controls were, currently it's set, and I'm going to go ahead and go to the player to show you. I'm going to go to my prefabs, and then I'm going to go to characters. I'm going to go to player, and I'll double click here in my player. Now, on my player, we have the player shooter, but what we want to do is head over to the mech target. Now, this mech target has a sphere collider, which is great. That's what's dictating what is targeted and how, if the range is in range, that sort of thing. But what we have here is a targeter. Now, if you look here for user input, right now it has Q, C, and Z. Now, we know right now currently that our C is set to crawl, and we may need to change that. Now, I think I'm going to have another video for controls, but it's going to be something more like kind of going over what our final controls could be. These things are probably going to change as we go through this, but for now, I am going to leave this the way it is. I bring this up only to show you that we do need a controller targeter. And so what we can do, and I was playing around with this, is you can add a component, and you can just go targeter. And here, what we can do is leave everything exactly the way this is, but only change the user input. So now, instead, if we want to have a certain button target, we can actually change this to something like a joystick button. Okay. So I don't know all the buttons off the top of my head. I'll need my my image here, but for now, I'll just pick the joystick 0 for that one, and then the next target, I'll do a different joystick button, maybe something like 4 or 5 or something, whatever button that does. We don't know yet. So, all right, great. So I'm going to change it to that just for now. And so I'm going to hit the back key, and then we're going to go into this and just confirm indeed that both the controller and the keyboard would work for our needs here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. All right, great. So we're in our scene here. We have our guys here. So I'm going to go ahead and target. And as you can see, I'm just going to go ahead and hit the Z key, and we're just going to target all these different guys. Now, when we pick up the controller, I'm going to go ahead and hit a jump button. Now, remember, we have all this thing set up. That's why it knows that we're active. Now, the jump button, apparently, that button is the active. So as you notice, when I jump, it starts to trigger who it's going to look at. And we wouldn't want this initially, but ideally for now, it's going to work fine. So right now, as you can see, when I jump, it activates and deactivates the targeting. So that shows that it definitely works. Now, I don't remember, it said button 5, so I'm not sure what button 5 is representing here. And yeah, I'm not sure which button is 5. But button 5 is supposed to get us. Oh, it looks, I see. So our crawl button is going to be the button that's also activating there. So it's pretty nice. So basically all I'm saying is you can definitely use a controller and a keyboard for both of these and have two targetable components added to your player's target game object, which is really, really nice. All right, and now our keyboard is now active. All right. Well, I hope this experience was really good for you guys. I think this is going to be an excellent way for us to be able to target enemies and be able to attack them. And as you can see, it's so much easier to focus on our enemies and attack and all of that. And so, and be engaged and blocking as well. Everything works very smoothly. All right. So I think that's going to be it for this video. I just wanted to talk about targeting. This is the best way, I think, to be able to do it. And yeah, so In our next video, I do hope to start looking at some additional things, but I do want to start thinking about starting the game and what's the first scene going to look like for our player. And then I want to start building out some level content, at least in terms of blocking out. Nothing pretty is going to be completely ugly, but it's going to be useful so that we can start getting some progression and start thinking about that, where our player is going to be. And then we can start finding the fun and actually platforming. And we're going to do our best with this. All right, so I'll see you guys in the next video. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. To stay up to date on the latest 3D platforming tutorial, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support, you can find me on Patreon, or of course you can hit me up on Discord. I like to talk about whatever project you guys are working on. Of course, thanks for hanging with me. Your support is always appreciated. As always, remember, never give up and keep moving forward. Peace.